Hi, welcome to this episode of Herald Cafe. Today we've got an interdisciplinary theatre artist from Bangalore, and his artworks are profoundly speaks about his Dalit identity and his experience. Welcome to this studio, Vamsi Matta, and welcome to Goa.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me first dig into your theatrical performances that you are going to do a interactive theatre performance here. Come Eat With Me.
Come Eat With Me, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Come Eat With Me is as you said, it's an interactive theatre performance. It sort of explores a unique and complicated relationship that caste has with food.
Okay.
Well, that is the basic idea of, you know, it's sort of, you know, it's an exploration on what exactly caste does to food and food practices.
Okay.
One of the things that the performance sort of looks at is, you know, often not people, when people talk about caste, it becomes, oh, this is the Bahujan's problem, this is the Dalit's problem, or this is the Adivasi's problem. But caste is the problem of everyone, right?
True.
There are casteist practices,
Yes.
not just, you know, with respect to the marginalized caste folk, but caste practices within every household. So food becomes an important area, or, you know, the line with which
where
caste sort of engages with.
And you can see a marked difference, like upper caste will eat this food and the lower caste will
It's
not
not just about what food they eat, how they eat, how, like for example, a dining table in any household is also a hierarchical table. Who eats first? Who prepares?
Yes.
Who eats the leftovers? You know, these are questions, right? So as much as my performance talks about food, it talks about everything around food.
And also you said it's an act of remembrance, How do you connect to that?
So I cook recipes that have been passed down by my ancestors, my mother, my aunts, my grandmom. I think it's an act of remembering them as I cook, but it's also, you know, right now we are talking about what is happening with women's bodies, right?
Right.
Especially at the intersection of caste and gender. There's historical violence against women from marginalized caste locations.
Like structural.
Yeah, structural, patriarchal, you know, different kinds of structures. So it's telling their stories. So yes, of course, this is my story and my exploration, but it's also stories of the women who have taught me how to cook.
And you have been to abroad, you were in the medicine university for almost a year, and you were doing a lot of performances, the same performances in India and in abroad. What are the differences that you find in that whole caste hierarchy, whether in abroad or here? Any anecdotes, any experience?
I mean, more than caste hierarchy, I would like to talk about the kind of audience actually, because even if you take, you know, non-Indians, you know, there's a very primitive understanding of caste.
Okay.
So one of the biggest chunk of my performance would go into making people understand what caste is.
True.
The most easy thing that people do is, oh, caste is like race, but it is not. But what I need to also acknowledge is that a lot of, you know, activists, writers, poets from the West, especially people of color, black and brown people, they've given us a lot of language to talk about.
Yes.
You know, I think that is something that I talk about. So I spend a lot of time in making them understand what caste is.
True.
And then the other thing that is very interesting is, this is something that many audience members have told me in the US. When I said something, they would take me to the face value. They would not question, you know, the things I would say something about caste. And this was like a realization that people at the end of my performance came to, that, oh, I'm not questioning you, but if someone were to talk about race, I would question them. And I think that is also a parallel to India here. If I say something about caste and say this is my lived experience, people immediately have questions. Oh, this is not
easily. I was just thinking myself in that audience that I will ask you questions.
Yeah. So that is one of very profound thing that stayed with me. How we think of marginalization in different contexts.
And how many performances have you done of this special program? And
so the one tomorrow I'm going to do at Museum of Goa is the 29th show. I've been
Okay.
doing it for 2 years now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what are the audience feedback? Like I know about the US guys,
Yeah.
like what about Indian audience?
I
Because
think
we are
more-
like deeply caste-based society.
Yeah, like there are three kinds of,
Mm.
3-4 kinds of reactions, but one important reaction that stays with me, that I continuously look forward to, is people from marginalized caste locations who are sitting in my audience, who feel seen and heard. And I think that is because caste as an experience becomes very lonely. The structure, what it does to you is makes you feel alone. But I think, performances like this, art that comes from locations like mine, sort of makes space for people to not feel alone, but feel seen, feel heard.
I also like personally like the fact that so many new age theater practitioners like you, writers, digital illustrators have come together to own up their Dalit identity. Like recently.
Yeah, I think social media, when it started off as a place of, it was a democratic place,
Yes,
right? And because of that, we were able to exist. And more than exist, we were able to connect with each other. Otherwise, an artist, say, living in Delhi would not be able to engage with an artist, say, like me in Bangalore, right? I think social media made it little accessible for folks like me to sort of go over there, talk to them. They come back here, talk to me. This exchange it was made easier because of social media.
Yeah, that Siddhesh also, the Bekri Prasad also told me about the similar thing, that social media or the new technology is helping the community to come up. It's in your face now.
Yeah, we are able to keep our voice out.
Similar to the printing press and a cheaper printing press when Ambedkar time happened, he
he was able
print,
to do that.
That is a major thing. And tell me about your growing up years. Can you tell us any anecdotes or any memorable experiences, maybe in this milieu of social justice or caste discrimination that has deeply impacted you and made you the person who you are now?
Many things. It's, a lot of things are just, going in front of my eyes, but not young age, but little older age, I'll tell. Like 2016, when, Rohit Vemula was institutionally murdered, there was a speech given by Smriti Irani.
Right.
And tables have sort of turned after that speech, where everyone's like, oh, she spoke like a woman, like a mother. No one found any problem with what she said. Many students would come to me and, of course, they knew that I was a reservation student, so they would want my opinion about this. So they would come and show that video to me. Multiple people, at least on that particular day when that video came out, at least 20-25 people came to me and showed me that video. And they asked me, did she say anything wrong? So as an artist, as a human being, I think my life has been very different. Pre Rohit Vemula and post Rohit Vemula. I think that was a moment where everyone were okay with the fact that it was not the death of a Dalit.
Got it.
But something else.
It's a collective thing has happened.
So, they were like, oh, why do you have to bring caste into this? People were oblivious to the fact that there was no caste involved, but I knew what it was. The words Smriti Irani said actually hurt me deeply and profoundly. And I think, just like me, there are many people like me whose life is extremely different post that. And that is a moment that we collectively hold to sort of understand. And we're still grieving. It's been, 8 years?
Yes.
And we're still grieving it. We don't get chances to grieve. And I think, folks like me who are trying to create these spaces are actually asking for that moment of grief. Sitting and grieving, because grieving also leads to healing.
Yes, it does.
We've not healed in a long time.
Cool. Yeah, that's a pivotal point, I'm sure. Okay, I think we're coming to an end of this talk, this conversation. Sorry, we've got so short that time. before leaving, would you like to say anything to the artist community about your experiences, like a message of hope, like your insights?
No, I think the thing is, like everyone has a monolithic idea of what art is, be it visual art, theater, dance, singing. But I think, like our lives, like our politics, art is also messy. We need to be able to make space for that mess, because I think the messiness will make way for innovative new art, because my life experience will be very different from your life experience. So how do you expect that both artists in a similar age, in similar not similar societal conditions, but in the same generation will do same kind of art, because our life experience are extremely different.
Different, right?
So our art is also different. So allowing for that,
we should embrace.
I think instead of there's a wonderful quote: instead of being judgmental, if we are curious, if we ask questions, I think we'll be a better space for artists.
Thanks, that was a good one, to end with. Yes. Okay, Vamsi, you also teach in the colleges. You have taught abroad, and you are going to teach in the colleges in India also. Tell us about the kind of pedagogy, or like what you are going to teach. Is it theater, mainstream theater?
So when I decided that I'm going to do this, one of the important questions that was asked to me by some of my mentors was, how are you different from the rest of the art practitioners? And that is something that I still try to answer. I have not come to a final answer. But one of the things I look at is, like any other art practice, theater is also highly gatekept, right? So my questions are about that, like who gets to decide what is theater and what is not, and in the larger idea of who gets to decide what is art and what is not. So the course that I've designed and I taught in the US, and I'm going to do that in India, is also that the course is called Whose Art Is It Anyway? Basically, I look at folk forms in India and sort of ask the question, okay, who gets to decide what becomes folk and what becomes classical, right? So if you look at that, there are a set of rules that sort of talk about, if you do this is classical, if not, this is folk. And there's a clear idea of what classical and what folk is, the kind of spaces these art forms occupy, the kind of stages, the kind of grants that are available, the kind of auditoriums, the kind of artists. Basically people in power decide the rules of art. So my course sort of looks at, okay, who are these people who make up the rules, and what are these rules look like? And I think it's right now we are at a juncture where art forms are blurring themselves and they're mixing together. That is how I call myself interdisciplinary, right? Like people are moving from, jumping from these forms and these disciplines. Boundaries are being blurred, right? And in this time and age, how can we be so strict about, this is how dance has to be, this is how theater has to be, right? So I think my course sort of dwells into the fact that, art boundaries of these art forms are being blurred, especially what is happening across the globe, where, artists are expanding in terms of the kind of innovation that they're doing. But in India, especially because most of these art forms are extremely gate-kept by people who are in extreme powerful positions. If you were to think of new art, how do we even think about if artists, like for example in schools, when art is being taught, it's taught in a very bound structure, very rigid structures. And I think we need to sort of rupture those structures, because those structures also are in place because of the power dynamics, and caste plays an important role.
True. I also think that these boundaries that boundaries that is there, all the generations previous to us, they also try to come out of this, like all these new isms have come, like cubism has come and all. Earlier it was not there. People have given a name. And I think we are making small subsets of everything. And when talk about art, you call it whole thing together. I think it's many layered.
But I think these small things are also, they're becoming a niche.
Right.
Like for example, who gets to be radical? Who defines that? And you know, these terms like avant-garde, new age, you know, that is also becoming a niche and not a way to make it free. People are not liberated, but people are like more put in boxes.
Got it. I understand
and structured to it. I think even for who gets to be avant-garde artist, especially in India, if you look at residencies and art grants or art awards outside of India, if you look at who are the people who are getting these? People with 40-year you know, art practice, mostly men, mostly dominant caste, Savarna, cis, heterosexual men, right? So why is it so? Because they are, they can be radical. They can be.
They have the agency to
be. Yeah. And they have the privilege and luxury to experiment.
Got it.
You know, if artists from marginalized communities, their sole thing is that, oh, they have to survive, they have to pay their rent, they have to find some food. Where will innovation come from?
True.
Despite of that, artists are doing some crazy kind of work.
True.
Especially, you know, from marginalized communities, because they don't have a choice but to be brilliant. They don't have that luxury of, you know, being.
They don't have that shock absorber. Yeah, I got it. Thank you, audience. This is Vamsi Matta, and he's a theatre practitioner. Look him up. He's got this very insightful performance piece of around like 2 hours.
1 hour.
1 hour.
1.5 hours.
So where he talks about his experiences and talks about the caste, and then he has a recipe. He cooks and he shares his food with everybody. It's called Come Eat With Me. It's happening in Goa for the first time.
Goa for the first time.
Goa for the first time at Museum of Goa. And wish you all the best, Vamsi.
Thank you.
I hope you do more.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, audience. I will see you next week.